welcome to Conversations on Craft, the podcast which aims to demystify the publishing process and help writers to improve their craft. And today we're joined by Hannah Sheppard, who runs her own boutique agency, HSLA, that aims to put authors at the heart of the publishing process. And she started her career in-house at the editorial department, first at Macmillan Children's Books, and then running the YA list at Headline, which is part of Hachette. And in 2013, she switched from editorial to agenting, and after 10 years at the DAHH Literary Agency, she decided to launch the Hannah Sheppard Literary Agency with the aim of being part of the change publishing so desperately needs. Hannah, welcome to Conversations on Craft.
Thank you. Hi. Hi, everyone.
We're thrilled to have you today. We're going to start off with our usual quick fire round. Do you prefer book or Kindle?
Book, every time.
And your favourite genre?
I was thinking about this. As a reader, probably sort of thrillers, but as an agent, YA.
Ooh. What is the worst way to start a query letter?
With negativity.
Is there one writer out there you wish you represented?
Oh, this one I really struggled with as well. So many. I'm going to go with Sarah Manning because Unsticky remains one of my absolute favourite books in the world, and I have met her and I think we'd have a really great time.
Wonderful. I'm going to add that to my TBR pile. Do you prefer series or standalone books?
Standalone.
And the best thing about being an agent?
Getting to tell an author when they've got a deal.
Oh, do people cry, Hannah?
Have I had anyone? No, I haven't had anyone cry, I don't think. Or at least not on the phone to me, maybe later.
Yes. Yes. We're going to start off with an insight into being an agent and then move on to your advice for writers. So did you always want to be an agent?
I don't think I actually knew what an agent was until I started working in publishing. So I knew I wanted to work with books, and I actually initially thought I wanted to work in the marketing department. And then I did work experience at Macmillan Children's Books, and there were 2 days of the week I was there when their marketing director was off and she couldn't look after me. And so they put me in editorial for 2 days, and it was like, oh, obviously this is where I should be.
Oh, isn't it incredible? There's so many jobs out there which I never knew existed as a child. And I think that same process of what people can get paid for working with books. So your Hannah Sheppard Literary Agency opened in March 2023. And can you talk us through your journey to this point and what made you decide to launch your own agency?
So I'd been an editor for about 10 years. And by the time I left, I was senior commissioning editor. And I was kind of looking ahead at what my career might look like if I stayed in-house, and it felt like the more senior you got, the less of the bits of my job that I really liked I would be hanging on to. So I was sort of thinking about the future and what the alternatives might be, and obviously by that point I did know what an agent was, and it sort of struck me from talking to lots of agents that actually doing that enabled me to hang on to more of the sort of creative aspects with authors that I really enjoyed. And so I made the decision when leaving Headline to move into agenting, and David Headley was very supportive and invited me to join DHH, primarily to do children's fiction for them, but I have the freedom to do lots of things. And then I think I've always been quite independent and ambitious, and agenting is, I couldn't set up my own publishing company very easily, but agenting does give you that freedom, and there was just something about the ambition to have something of my own that made me, after 10 years with DHH, decide to take that leap.
You've had such a long and very quick career in publishing. What changes have you seen since first starting in the editorial department and then becoming an agent?
I think, the sort of digitisation, even from a workflow perspective, when I first started, my job was basically photocopying the manuscripts that had come in that week that people needed to read over the weekend. So there's a lot more efficiency, I guess, in being able to just email manuscripts around. I do sometimes wonder whether we were using email when I first started, but not to the extent we are now, and I wonder whether that has shifted something in a negative way. I think there's a lot of busyness that isn't necessarily getting anything done all the time. What else has changed? I mean, I have seen cycles of, no, this new technology is going to kill publishing, go round and round, and it hasn't yet. So I'm hoping that people will still want to read in some form. And there have been cycles where the market has been tough, but it has always come round again. So I'm just hopeful that that continues to.
I love listening to interviews with authors when they describe how they found their agent, and it involved like photocopying your manuscript 10 times and paying this extortionate amount in postage. I think, wow, it sounds quite, I don't know, old school, but also there's a certain, I suppose I romanticise it a bit, the thought of all these big chunky manuscripts being sent out into the world.
But there was something I really loved about, because, manuscripts would come in during the week. We'd have our editorial meeting on a Monday, so over the course of the week, we'd decide which ones we thought were important for the whole team to read. And I would be in charge of photocopying those on the Friday for people to take home. And there was something nice about that kind of the bag of manuscripts that felt much more sort of old school and romanticised than the e-reader full of manuscripts. But the paper cuts were lethal.
Oh gosh, oh my goodness. So when you receive a submission, do you read them all at once? How do you space them out? I know your agency opens just for the first week of each month, and at the moment you're closed for submissions. But how do you tackle them? Do you set aside a chunk of time? Do you open certain parts of the queries first?
I try to work through them in the sort of order they come in. It is very difficult, and some weeks I will have more time to look at them than others. I try to get into a habit of doing a few with my morning coffee. I don't always manage it, but it's very much outside of office hours, whatever spare time I have, just to dip in and do a couple, which is why it's such a slow process. And in terms of the material, I always read the cover letter and then the start of the sample text. I can usually tell if it's a no from that, and then if there's something that's kind of keeping me there, then I will keep reading, and then I will check the synopsis.
Someone used a wonderful analogy once, and I can't remember who this wonderful person was, but it's like when somebody sits down to play the piano, you kind of know very quickly if they can play the piano or if they can't play the piano. And do you find writings like that when you read submissions?
There's a bit of that, and that there are definitely some people who have a sort of magic about the way they write that other people don't. But it's a combination of things. So for me to take something forward, it has to be, there's a sort of head and heart aspect to it. So I have to be able to see the publishing route for it. And then I also have to feel something for the writing or the story in some way. So it's that combination of things that I'm looking for.
And how do you know when that combination comes together? Is it like a spidey sense of tingles or
feeling?
Yeah. How exciting. Can you give us an insight into how many submissions you receive and what advice you can give to writers who kind of are faced with this very competitive industry, and it almost feels like because of technology and because everyone can send off emails and query tracker, you can like send hundreds of queries off very quickly, really. The barriers seem insurmountable. It seems like writers are facing this sea of competition. And any advice for how to navigate that and what your experience of the numbers coming into you are?
I always think the numbers make it sound impossible. So we only open for 7 days a month, and during those 7 days I would say I get between 300 and 400 submissions.
Wow.
And a part of that is that because we're only open those days, people are waiting. So it wouldn't be that consistent if we were open over the full month. But I think even when I was open all the time, I was often getting over 100 a week. And in terms of how to navigate it, I think you just have to. I think it's about making sure the book you're writing is so true to you that only you could have written it, so that it does stand out from other things. Because the biggest issue is that, most of the books I turn down, they're not bad books, they're not badly written, but they're not exceptional enough. And there's a lot of sort of very same stuff in what comes in, and we're looking for those things that are different.
So tricky because you don't kind of always know that your work is the same to lots of other writers. I was really interested when I looked at the entries into a Scent novel, and I thought, oh gosh, we've got all these entries about the afterlife and people navigating the afterlife. And as a writer, you're never in that position to kind of see when things have almost turned into a cliche, because there must be some kind of zeitgeist, or everyone's suddenly writing about
those kind of. What was the thing I had recently? I had like time to do 20 submissions, and I think 5 of them were about the same thing. I was like, wow.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Wonderful, because minds must be connected in a certain way, or there must be certain issues that people feel they want to address, but it's hard to know. Actually, your story is very similar to many other writers out there. Very tricky.
It's not even that it's deeper than it being the story that's the same, because I think that does happen a lot, but it's about your spin on that story being so unique to you. So I don't want authors to get too worried about that zeitgeist thing, because I think if your story is the one where your particular spin on it is just so unique, then it doesn't matter about the others.
Yes, yeah. Can you talk us through what happens once you offer representation? I feel there's an awful lot of information out there about the querying process and how to get an agent, how to put together the package. What happens after that? So you've offered representation. What's the process afterwards?
So usually in the sort of conversation where I make that offer, there will have been some conversation about what editorial work might need to be done. And if that's quite big picture stuff, then I might ask the author to go away and do that based on the conversation before I then read it again, and we do a more sort of line edit. Or it might be that it just needs a line edit, and so I will give some indication of when that might happen and get it across to the author as soon as possible. And while the author is working on those edits, I will be starting to have conversations with editors about the fact that I've taken this on and it will be coming soon, and trying to sort of gauge which editors I should be sending it to. And then we do the submission.
Your insight as an editor must just be incredible for your agency, because you know exactly what happens on the other side. What kind of insights do you have as an agent now, having come from that editorial background?
So I think one of the things authors struggle with most is these long periods of silence where it feels like nothing is happening. And that's not the case. It's just that there is stuff happening in-house that the author isn't needed for at that particular moment. And I think being able to explain what's happening in those times is really useful. And then the other thing I find useful is sometimes publishers can they'll make a decision about a cover, or they'll delay something, or just something will happen, and the author will immediately think it's something they've done, or that it means that the publisher has gone off the project or something. And because I know what the sort of sales and marketing conversations are, and the fact that Waterstones get involved, and I'm able to sort of explain what the other things that might be going on are.
And support the author through that process. I love on your website, and I'm going to put a link to your website in the bio, it's so centered around your writers and future authors, because you have a promise to authors and kind of outline how you prioritize their needs, which I just think is incredible. You've got a fantastic resource page. You put in some things about never putting pressure on authors to make a decision, and I just wondered, do you have any advice for how writers can protect themselves? Because I've also heard of people people pretending to be agencies and asking for money and things like that.
I mean, it's really worrying, the number of people pretending to be agents. And I mean, I think there are two things going on. So there are, what do you call them, bad actors who are setting themselves up as agents without perhaps the experience of publishing and with a sort of exploitative view. And I think if anyone is asking for money, walk away, because that's not how agenting works. An author doesn't have to pay an agent. Agents make money by taking commission from the deals they get for an author. There is no money flows from the agency to the author. It doesn't flow the other way. And then the second thing is the sort of almost like, I don't know whether they're AI, but they're bordering on AI scams where people are pretending to be existing agents reaching out to authors. And I think in those instances, you just have to check the email address. If it's coming from a Gmail account, then it's probably not a legitimate agent. Or if it's, they can clone email addresses and make them look very similar. Agents are unlikely, and some do, but it's less likely an agent is reaching out to you than you having submitted to them.
So if one reaches out to you, it's not a red flag necessarily, but an amber flag that full checking is required because it's quite rare.
I think maybe if you're writing non-fiction or you're a non-fiction expert of some sort, it probably happens quite frequently there because people are looking for people to write specific things. In fiction, I think it probably only happens as part of a sort of like the Faber anthology or some event. I think it would be very rare for someone to just reach out cold to something they'd seen you post on the internet.
Yeah, good advice. So for writers who are about to take a call with an agent, presumably with the agent wanting to offer representation, what is discussed at that call? What kind of questions should writers be asking?
Often, there will be a kind of getting to know each other part of the call, and there'll be a discussion about any editorial work that the agent thinks needs to happen. And then the author needs to be checking. So if they have specific questions about edits that need to happen, they should raise those with the agent to see that you're on the same page. And then I would be asking how the agent handles international rights, because there are a few different options there. And I wouldn't necessarily say any are better or worse. It's just good to know that they have a plan. I would be asking what the sort of timeframes are for A, for edits, and then B, for when they think the submission might happen. If they think there are any sort of advantages to waiting for a book fair or whatever it might be. I would be asking who you'll be communicating with mostly. Will it be the agent themselves or will it be an assistant? And then I think the thing I always advise authors is just to make sure you feel really comfortable with the agent. I think a lot of times authors think we're going to be quite scary, and there is a power imbalance, and as an author you're trying so hard to find an agent and it's quite hard to get in, and I get that. But that doesn't mean you should just take the first offer you get. You need someone who you think you can have a really open working relationship with, who you can raise problems with, you can tell them if they've upset you, and you can also hear it back from them if you've done something wrong, because so much of this relationship is based on trust, and if that trust breaks down then the whole thing falls apart. So you need to be able to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah. There's a few things that have surprised me about the publishing process, and some of them are that sometimes books don't sell, and some of them are that you could have an editor and then the editor leaves. And how do you support writers through these unexpected situations that they can encounter during the publishing process?
It's just continuing to have conversations and talk about the plan and pivot the plan when necessary.
Yeah. So, as this year's judge for Ascent Children's Book Prize, are there any types of stories that you're particularly looking forward to reading?
I want those stories that I have not seen before, which I know is really tough. But that just slight spin on the familiar that changes it into something completely new.
I must admit, this is a confession, that Inkbound, I can see it in your background. That is the book I wish I'd written, Hannah. That has such an incredible pitch. And as soon as I saw that on social media, I thought, I couldn't wait to buy it for my own children. It's just wonderful. Yeah, the hook is just incredible. Are you quite a hands-on editorial agent?
Yeah.
Obviously, with your editorial background, do you have any advice for writers looking to improve their craft and kind of get their manuscript to a more polished level?
So I mean, separately from looking at your own manuscript, I think it's really good practice to read critically. So have in mind the structure of a story, the inciting incident, the sort of main turning points, the resolution, and read books in your area, the same market that you're aiming for, and just really look, where does that inciting incident happen? Where do these turning points happen? How is the author holding my attention and keeping me turning the pages? What are the tricks they're using? And then try and bring those into your writing.
So big picture first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I find pacing so difficult because until you've written it, you think it's so hard to get that kind of bird's eye view of a manuscript, isn't it? I made the awful mistake once of sending off a novel before I'd given it space to breathe and read through it. And when I read through it, I thought, oh my goodness, the pacing in this first section is absolutely horrendous.
Yeah. I think reading your manuscript aloud to yourself is also a really good. It means you hear it in a different way to when you're reading it. And so it is a sort of fresh reading that you wouldn't get otherwise. I think you can get so familiar with your own manuscript that it becomes hard to see things. But I think it also, if you're slightly losing the attention as you try to read it, that gives you a good indication of where your pacing might be off.
Wonderful. You mentioned in your advice kind of grabbing the attention of the reader. Do you think that's more important now than ever?
Yeah. It's really important, and it's important for the end reader, particularly in children's. We are talking so much about how the pandemic has impacted kids' reading and the way what they're reading has shifted as a result. But even into the sort of industry level, getting that attention for your manuscript, editors want that hooky pitch because it makes it easier for them to sell it to their marketing and sales departments. Agents are very pressed for time, so if you have that hooky pitch in your submission, it is going to make it easier to get the agent's attention than if they have to kind of dig through and I mean, I hate saying this, but think a bit more about it.
Yeah. Have you ever taken on a writer and helped them hone their pitch and improve their pitch? And do you have advice on how to make pitch really stand out?
I mean, yes, I do that a lot. Different aspects to that. I think you need to be able to describe your book in a sentence. And often the starting point for that is something like, when the inciting incident happens, protagonist must do action, otherwise before stakes happen. And so you're getting across that sort of the elements that are driving the plot forward. And I think if you can describe your plot in that sentence, then that's a really good starting point for pulling out to the blurb. And then the more marketing style pitch lines, I think you have to think about what the book is and what suits that particular book best. You can go for something that is taking the character's voice if that is a particularly strong part of the book, or you can go for something that is playing on tropes if that's, there are many ways to do it. And I think looking at the types of marketing pitch lines that are used in bookshops on the fronts of books, and then having a go at each of them for your book until you find the one that sort of feels strongest is a really useful exercise.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. I'm going to try that one. That sounds incredible. In terms of supporting writers at a line level, are there some common edits that you find yourself giving to writers? Are there certain things that are kind of easy to look out
Filtering
for?
phrases, just cut all your filtering phrases. I think particularly new writers are maybe overdo dialogue tags quite a lot, and just keeping that quite simple so that it's not intruding in the reading experience. Some people rely a bit too much on, or maybe not rely is the wrong word, but I think it's a way of writing yourself into the scene, but a lot of people leave too much information about where the character is turning, stepping, facing, so you're getting a lot of kind of words used up with detail that we don't really need.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Talking about dialogue tags, it made me think of the process into Audible type narrations, because I always think, oh, I don't need all those she says, he says, when I can hear the characters' voices when someone's speaking. Has that element changed? Do you now sell rights to Audible, for example, or is that a different part of the market now?
It's definitely a bigger part of the market, and I've become much more of an audio reader than I ever used to be. We do some separate audio deals. The major publishers want the audio rights, and there is
Okay.
very, very few circumstances where they'll buy the print rights if they can't have the audio rights. So we play that one by ear a bit.
Are there any aspects of publishing that you're particularly excited or anxious about at the moment?
In terms of excitement, I think we are due another sort of big moment, the sort of the Twilight, the Hunger Games. There has to be something else coming, and I'm excited to see what that is.
In the YA area, or just generally, do you think?
Generally, those kind of big moment books. I mean, a lot of them do happen in YA, but there are definitely books in other areas, or those, like we had the shift to romantasy, and although that romantasy is very much still going strong, it feels like we could have a shift to something else at some point. Maybe editors might be ready for that, even if the general reader isn't. And then anxious. I mean, AI is something we're all keeping an eye on, and it definitely has far-reaching repercussions, I think.
Do you have views on that as an agency, or is it just something that you're observing closely?
We won't accept anything that has used generative AI.
And also at Ascent Novel Prize, we don't. If AI has been used in any part of the process, yeah, I have strong personal opinions because it's built on stolen work essentially, but I know everybody has a very different viewpoint. I think surely you're a writer because you want to do the writing part.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything specific? I know your inbox is closed at the moment, but when you open in September and those 400 entries fly in, is there anything that you would really love to see?
I feel like I've got room on my list for... are we only talking children's, or are we talking adults?
We can talk children's and adults. We could do it because you kind of represent the whole range, don't you?
So I think an adult, like I love Alice Feeney and Andrea Mara, Gilly McAllister, is that right?
McAllister, yes, yeah.
And the way they write their twists, I'm just obsessed with. I would love to find someone who was consistently delivering those sort of twisty female-led thrillers. And then on the kids' side, I think I have more room for more YA. But it needs to be different and unique, and quite big concept, big world. Middle grade is really tricky at the moment. My heartland in middle grade is that magical, the Inkbound, the Abbey Elphinstone, but it's really tricky to place that at the moment. So something shorter and funny and illustrated would be really helpful.
Your thought process then, and considering what's already on your list and something that's different and slightly wouldn't clash with another author, or it's really interesting insight.
Yeah, as long as, you know, I have to have an eye on the market and what publishers are looking for, but it is also personal taste, and so it has to speak to me. And then I think as long as two authors aren't doing exactly the same thing, then as long as there are enough points of difference, it's fine to have some similar people on the list, but not too similar.
Ask you, on your website, you mentioned a monthly Zoom drop-in. Do you still offer that drop-in?
Yeah, it happens every month except for December because it's the last Wednesday of the month.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that really makes your agency stand apart, because while I have very mixed feelings about Agent ones that you can pay for, because I was a free school meal kid, and I do think there are amazing writers out there who actually, to have a spare £80 pay for an agent one-to-one, it almost creates this barrier. But yet I also love that people can get that access, so I have mixed feelings around paying for certain things. And I think for your agency to offer a free drop-in where anyone can access, it's one of those small things that actually has a huge impact on removing barriers for writers. And I have used that drop-in myself about a year ago, so I'll post. Yes, you were very kind and very wonderful. Your internet had gone in your office, so you had run to a cafe.
That was the worst one.
And you were like, I'm so sorry, I'm in a cafe. But it still went ahead, and your advice was wonderful. So I'll post a link to that specifically. There's a registration form that you fill in to offer that free when so many things that are offered people charge for. And so incredible.
That came out of being on the other side of those agent one-to-ones, and sort of the number of times people said, "Oh, I thought you were going to be really scary," and I wanted to find a way to give people a chance to meet an agent before they start the submission process, to sort of break that down a bit, because we're just people who really like books, and yeah, I think any questions I can answer about the process and how publishing works is helpful. And yeah, I want to bring down those barriers, particularly for people who do not have the kind of the privileged routes into publishing.
And I think it's those people who sometimes can feel that power imbalance more. You mentioned earlier, writers want the dream so desperately. There is that power imbalance, which makes it open for when these scammers are trying to impersonate agents. So to demystify the publishing process like that is just wonderful. Hannah, it's been so incredible talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And best of luck with judging our submissions. So our Ascent Children's Book Prize is open until the 1st of July, and then Hannah will be reading submissions, and we'll be announcing our winner, I believe, on the 1st of December. Hannah, thank you so much.
Thank you.